Ashley, and hello everyone. You hopefully can all see my screen and you see Microsoft Dynamics GP already loaded, and so we're going to really spend all of our time today in the product. We're not going to do slides or just chit chat. We're actually going to go through the product, not all of it of course, but a pretty good overview of what Dynamics GP 2016 looks like. I will mention that on December 15th, we're going to do a GP 2018 product tour. 2018 is scheduled to ship about December 1st, and it looks like Microsoft is on track to make that deadline. And so our new product tours, starting with December's on the 15th, will be based on the brand new version GP 2018. And you're welcome to come back and take a look at that one if you can do so. But today we're looking at GP 2016. I've logged in here and I'm logged into obviously just a sample company, but I have the ability in GP to have unlimited companies. I only have 3, but you'll see here in the drop down, I'm spending my time today in this company called Fabricam. So any number of companies I could have out there. I am logged in as a system administrator, and so you'll see my user ID down here says SA. So keep that in mind. I have no security being applied to this account at all. So everything is complete. Everything's wide open, completely available to me. There's nothing being hidden away at all. In real life, of course, people have different roles and security, and so not everything is available to every user. But today, it's all unlocked. So a couple of different ways to navigate Dynamics GP. One is what I'd call the traditional way. So you see kind of my top menus here, and you'll see the traditional Microsoft kind of cascading here off to the right. Lots of menus, lots of choices, a little bit overwhelming sometimes on where things are. And of course, I have lots of stuff installed. Not everybody has every module installed or even turned on, but I have pretty much everything here except manufacturing I do not have in this environment. And so this is one way. This is the way that was originally in the system many, many years ago. And some people still use that if they've been on the software a long time. The other way, or the second way, I should say, is kind of this left navigation pane. So you'll see I'm on my home page here. I could toggle over to any other part of the system that I have security to. So if I toggle over to my financial section, then everything to do with finance is brought onto this page. If I go over to purchasing, as an example, everything to do with purchasing, like purchase order, accounts payable, cutting checks to vendors or paying them electronically, producing 1099s, anything to do with procurement is pulled onto this page that I would have access to. So that's the second way. And you'll notice up here, kind of on the left part of this navigation, as I kind of move around the different parts of the system, I have shortcuts up here that I can list as well. So if I have report shortcuts that I want to put here, I can do so. If I have screen shortcuts that I want to put here, this is actually a shortcut to an external website called Customer Source, which is a site that Microsoft runs for Dynamics GP users. I could create a shortcut for FA maintenance. I named it that, fixed asset maintenance. And so if I go into fixed assets a lot, I could put that as a shortcut on my navigation window here. And so you'll see as we kind of open some of the windows, you'll see these red fields and the blue fields. The red fields are required, and those are not required to be red. Those are just required by the database. I have mine turned on red just so they're easy to see, but that's just an option. The blue underline fields just means that that's where we get the data from. And so there's things back there. For example, if I wanted to work on the structure ID, so let me pop an asset in here so you kind of see the data. So if maybe I have the ability to add or maintain structures, well, the structure is just kind of a place where this asset might be. And so you see kind of my sample list here. So those blue underlines allow you to drill back into where that data is. Custodians would take me back to where I could set up my employees and then use those as custodians as far as who's holding on to which asset. And so that's the second way is to navigate, is to use this left navigation pane. The third way, which is where we're going to spend most of our time, is just right off my home page. And so in my home page is what you see here. These are all various tiles that I have pulled onto my home page, and every single one of our home pages would look different. And so based on what we do, what job we have, and what role security we have in the system and so forth. And the home pages are configurable, and so, you know, if I like to rearrange things, I can easily just drop and drag things like that. If I want to focus my home page on a certain section, for example, if I put time and expenses into projects, which is just one example on my home page, I can focus my page on that being actually the main section. And so we're going to kind of drive most everything off of our home page today. And so 3 different ways to navigate the system. And you can use any of the 3. You can settle with one, but you have to use one of them. So, what all can I do on my home page? Well, let me start down at the bottom here. Some of these we won't spend a ton of time on, but here I've got my timekeeping system. And so if I do have users capturing time in the system, I can do that through here, where I can enter a time card. I can view my pay stub. So maybe if we happen to do payroll in Dynamics GP, which is a module that comes with the system, if I want users to be able to log in and get their actual pay stub, they can do that. And you see all of my pay stubs here. This is kind of nice if they're meeting with maybe they're buying a new car this weekend, and it's Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and they're trying to get their last couple of pay stubs to get financed. Well, you know, there's probably nobody at the office that can call, and they didn't bring those with them, or like most people, they can't find them at home. Well, they don't need to. All they need to do is make a connection. Of course, they could do this over their phone, over their iPad, their Android phone, using our web client. They could log in and have access to all of their pay history. And so if they needed that pay stub, of course, they could send that out to be printed, which doesn't help much on your phone. But if they printed it to the screen, they could then click on the send to, and then they could email this out to the finance director or whoever it might be that needed a copy of this, and so might email it to themselves, for example, if they wanted one in their inbox. And so you'll see a lot of the reports really kind of have the same flavor to them. These are what I'd call their traditional style reports. Traditional meaning these are the original reports built into the system from many years ago, and so they can all be modified. You see the modify button there, so if you don't like what Microsoft has done, you want to rearrange these or change the headings or take something off or put something on that maybe is not here, you have the ability to do that. Of course, we know we can email these out. We can print these, and so I have all mine by default set to go to the screen, but you could default these to go to the printer or to both. But if you do print it to the screen and you do want a hard copy of it, you can select any printer that this computer happens to see and send these reports out on a piece of paper. And so you'll see a couple of these that we look at. These are, again, kind of the traditional reports. There's no drill down or drill back functionality in here. We'll see some that do have that, but these older style reports do not. They're really just to get something on a piece of paper. And so the other thing that a lot of people do is look at their W-2, and so maybe I need a copy of my W-2. In fact, this is a way that if people are doing payroll through the system, that W-2s are delivered. Instead of handing out paper copies, we many times would just have it published up to the user's portal site here, and the employee could log in. They might not have any access, generally would not have any access to anything else in the system. They wouldn't be able to leave their home page. They wouldn't see any accounting data. They would only see their own kind of personnel data. And so things like W-2s, pay stubs, if they need to update their benefits or update their direct deposit, maybe they changed banks or they had a family event change, had a kid or got a kid to move out of the house and they're going to update their withholdings and so forth. They can do all that through the user interface with a very scaled down user license, scaled down in functionality. and scaled down in cost. And they can do that right from the home page here without seeing any accounting sensitive data, or of course seeing anyone else's data. The procurement section here, we do have the ability to enter and process requisitions. And so here's a purchase requisition that I filled out. You'll notice here the red fields, the requirements, not really much there. And so this is designed for users to log in, again, with a very scaled down license and security to produce a requisition, send that through the GP workflow so that that can go into a number of approvals here. And then eventually on to purchasing, to create a purchase order and get that out to the vendor. Now, I've let this reject out a few times so that we could get some history built up here, but we do store all of the history for the requisitions, and so you'll see a number of rejections. I finally submitted it once here, and this one didn't require approval, so I have my approval set based on a threshold, I think, of about $10,000. So anything more than 10,000 or 10,000 or more goes out for approval. Anything that's less than 10,000, I don't require approval, and so that can sail right on through to purchasing. And so lots and lots of options on the workflow on what we set up, and kind of how we route those out to different people, different departments, maybe based on the vendor or the GL account being used. Really up to us. As long as that data element's in the system, we can build a workflow on that as a general rule. And so so you would see users coming in and kind of managing requisitions here. It could be the approver is here as well. Typically the approver is not a system user, but if they were, they could make approvals right through the interface here. Most of the time though, the approvals go out through email, and the approver then receives the email, and they can take action. They can accept it or approve it. Basically, they can reject it, or they could delegate it on to someone else. And so that's typically done through an email message. Okay. Again, we kind of talked about the timekeeping section here. We're going to spend most of our time kind of in the top part of the system here. The quick links, this is where I kind of build my own personal menu. So those things that I work on a regular basis, I would put onto my homepage, or could. So I can take action without navigating the system other than just with one click. So if I reconcile bank accounts on a regular basis, I have the ability to come in, and you'll notice I had a number of checkbooks set up here. So I just grabbed one of those that I've actually started a reconciliation on. And this has the ability to electronically read data from a file that you would download from your bank's website, and so that you don't go in and have to check off or tick off checks and deposits manually, although you could do that. You'll see here for just a second, it's doing the electronic reconcile where it's going through and it's ticking off from my little test file. It's ticking off those things that have ended up clearing. And so, you know, I can come in and kind of do the old-fashioned thing though and check them off if I want to, but that's kind of a waste of time nowadays. And so I can reconcile any number of checkbooks in the system, keep track of cash from a cash flow standpoint. And so here's a shortcut to my cash flow calendar. So this shows me what's going on by month. And most of my data is back in April. And so you'll see here kind of the key is that when I see red, that's more money going out that day than coming in. Blue is more money coming in. Looks like the 12th, more money came in than went out. And then, of course, the black kind of running number is the actual checkbook balance. And so if I toggle over to May, and I might want to see, well, we got a lot of money going out here, but there's some money coming in on May 1st. Well, what is that, I wonder? So I can click on that and drill down into what represents this particular amount. Well, do I have any receivables that might be collected? No, doesn't look like it. Do I have any payables going to be paid? Well, I've got one there that's open. and oh, here I've got some in work. Work means they're still in a batch, and they could change. So this batch isn't posted yet. So somebody out there in my accounting department is putting some payables in, and it looks like they're dated 4/1 with a May 1 due date. So on May 1st, if I pay these on schedule, this vendor has 30-day terms. If I pay them on terms that on May 1st, I would have this much money leaving the bank account. Well, that's not the 50 or 43,000 that we see here. That's just a few $1,000s. So that must mean that I have something else. Oh yes, and see, I do have a draw on my line of credit. And so I can double click on that and go back and see that I have manually entered a draw on my bank line of credit. Of course, there's not really a payable in there for that. And so we do have the ability to put things into the cash flow projection that the system doesn't know about today. And so it looks like I'm going to deposit 50,000 on the 1st. On the 12th, I expect to spend half of that on a piece of equipment, apparently. And so, you know, if I look at the cash flow on 5/12, I would see that 25 traveling out of the bank account. And so, in fact, I could just do that. Bring back up the calendar here. Looks like the 12th, I am expecting some money coming in, but you'll see there that I do have that 25,000 expected to be spent. And if I look at the money coming in, so collections on receivables, I have a whole lot of things here. So the 12th should be a good day if all of this happens. And so there's some ability to kind of project cash and kind of take a look at what, you know, what might be happening that the system knows about, and then some of those things that it doesn't know about. Dynamics GP also has the ability to track non-financial data. And so let me just go to one that I have set up here. And so we call those unit accounts. And so here I have rent expense set up as a unit account. Well, this I'm actually using in an allocation. And so what this is telling the software is I want to allocate rent. In this case, I'm not necessarily tracking a unit, but I want to allocate rent to several different departments or divisions in the company. And when I post into this 0006180 account, I really want the software to come through and reallocate that based on these fixed percentages. And so I've broken the allocation down so that it equals 100. I want 5% of the rent to go to Division 100. I want 25% to go into Department 500 type thing. And so that's a fixed allocation where we're just simply reallocating numbers from kind of an admin account out into the cost centers or the different groups of the company. And so I can set up unlimited fixed allocations. If I go into my variable allocation, and so a variable meaning that I don't have a fixed percent to put in the system, so you'll see that part is missing, and I want to do the same type of thing with utilities. I still have my 6 different departments or divisions that I'm going to reallocate utilities to, but you'll notice I don't have the percentage there. But when I highlight on one of these, you'll see then it opens up the what we call the breakdown account, and this actually is my unit account. And so how are we allocating utilities? Well, if I drill back on that, we're seeing we're allocating utilities based on head count. And so for the month of April, where most of my data is, I've entered 70 here. So I've got 70 people in this department. So I'm going to take this 70 over the total head count for all departments and figure out what percentage that is. And then I'm going to apply that percent to my utilities. And this department's going to get their kind of pro rata share of that utility expense. And so the unit accounts, I have some set up here, but again, no limit on how many we could have. I've got number of telephones, I've got square footage. Let me sort here by description. And so, you know, I could have the number of computers if I was going to allocate IT costs. So really up to you. There's no restrictions or anything of the sort on what you could put in here for unit accounts. And a unit account, again, it's not dollars and cents, it's not debits and credits, it's something different. And so we can track unlimited unit accounts that we might want to use in reporting. And of course, we could pull these into our financial statements. If we produced a profit and loss, we could slice up sales, for example, by total head count. Or, you know, if we had a profit and loss set up for a department, we could slice those numbers up, divide those numbers up by any of the unit accounts that we might have stored in the system. And so that's another kind of popular use of these unit accounts. Okay, so two types of allocations there, fixed and variable. Let's see, we talked about the bank reconciliation. Of course, the software has safe pay, or what the banks call positive pay. So here's Bank of America's positive pay layout. And I think this really is their layout. And so, you know, if we send checks out, so a lot of people pay electronically, but not everybody. But if we send checks out to pay our vendors, we could optionally send a positive pay file to the bank, and a lot of banks are starting to require it because it covers them on liability too, that a check doesn't go through the account that you don't know about. And so, you know, we dump those things into our positive pay file, we upload that to the bank, and then when the checks come back for clearing, the bank compares that check information to the positive pay file we sent them, and if there's a match, they pay the check. If there's not, then whoever presented the check potentially gets the check back saying, nope, not going to happen. Now, most banks give you a login so you can go see those checks that they're suspecting that might be fraudulent, and you could mark those for clearing or return if you really don't know what the check was. They don't automatically send it back. So most banks have a process there for you to give you a day or two to kind of look at the check. But that's all part of the system as well. And so this is kind of the quick links, the things that we work on every day, the windows that we interact with, whether it's lookups or entering data, kind of running reports, whatever it might be, are all kind of in these shortcut areas. So, and the My Reports is really that. The last part of that is if we run reports on a regular basis, this is an easy way with one click to actually generate any report in the system. And so you see here, I'm opening an accounts payable aging. And so make that a little bit bigger here. And so this again is one of those older style reports that is more traditional, and there's no drill down or drill back on it, but we can do the same thing. We can modify this. We can send it out to someone in email. You'll notice I have PDF lit up here. Well, I have Adobe Creator here, and so the full version of Acrobat, and so I have the ability to create a PDF, and as long as I have the ability to create that PDF, then this will light up automatically, so it'll bundle this up into a nice PDF document, and I can email that out, or of course I could print, as we looked at a few minutes ago. And so any report that I might run on a regular basis, I would pull onto my home page, and with one click then I have access to the report. I don't need to go through any kind of navigation or trying to remember where was that report and what did it look like, and you know, you spend 15 clicks and 15 minutes trying to find something that you printed a week ago. Well, you just drag it onto your home page and then you've got it. The next area, kind of working backwards here, I'm going to make this one a little bit larger and change my focus here. This is kind of our business analyzer area, and this is really looking at a different style of reporting where we're not necessarily seeing numbers on paper, where we could see raw data. Of course, that one has no data, but many times we want to present this data in graphical format, and so we could do something like this. So this is our cash position, current to prior, so this year, last year. So this is good. It doesn't take too much to look at this and say, yep, our cash is in a whole lot better position here than what we were a year ago. Going to the next one, this actually is more raw data, but it's not every single debit and credit or dollar and cent that's gone through the cash account. It's really just summarized so that we can see what the numbers are. And so when we look at this period versus last period, we can see, oh yeah, we're up a whole lot of money here, so big percentage, so that's good, and that was represented by the graph. Other types of tools we have are like dials, so you know, if you just want to see kind of a number, you could use kind of almost like a gas gauge type dial here. This is a heat map, so here we see in this case sales throughout the US by state, and then a little grid on, you know, if we're selling a lot or a little. And so you could have people by state, or we have some customers, they only did business in one state, and so we showed them how to retool this to pull in the counties from their state, and so they can see sales by county. You could do sales by zip code, whatever you want. And so these are just tools that are available. There's a couple hundred of these type of reports, whether it's the charts and graphs or something that's more raw data like this. You've got about 220, 230 of these, depending on which modules you turn on. In fact, I'll show you that list. And so here are the 6, I guess, that you're seeing on my homepage, but here's everything that's available to users. Now, you know, these Microsoft provides, you can edit any of these to your own liking, and obviously that's stuff we show you how to do. You can create your own from scratch, so there's no limit on how many of these kind of dashboard style reports that you would have in your system. And, you know, if you're not using the payroll and HR features, well then of course none of these reports that are employee based will light up. If you don't do sales through the system, maybe your revenue somewhere else and we're importing that every month or week or day into the general ledger, so we have sales information, but Dynamics GP doesn't know about the transaction detail, well, you're not going to get some of the sales reports to light up, of course. And so there's a couple hundred. Obviously, you probably wouldn't use all of those, but lots and lots of stuff on inventory, lots of stuff on finance, sales, receivables, financial, like general ledger, fixed asset type reporting. Cash, obviously, is a big one. And so, you know, you can use any of these you like. You're seeing just out of the box stuff here on mine. But, you know, the beauty of this particular tool is not so much that it's available inside of Dynamics GP, because as a GP user, I could go get this detail on a report. I wouldn't necessarily have to go see it in a graph. But these are really more powerful when they're sent out to the outside. And so I'm going to open a browser. I just happen to click on Internet Explorer. This works fine through Chrome. And I opened Internet Explorer because I have a shortcut, so truth be told. And so here's my GP 2016. And the company I'm in, remember I had 3 set up. I'm in this one, so there's companies 5 and 6 there. And we're actually looking at mostly financial stuff, but you see I've got folders for all the other modules here. So if I go into sales, you'll see a number of reports that are available to run through the browser and all the charts and graphs and kind of key performance indicators. And so, and again, these are the few hundred that come with. All these are editable by you. You can create your own from scratch. You can do a save as and change theirs up. Totally up to us on what we do with this. So, but what I wanted to point out is that these reports are available in this style through any browser, which makes them available through any mobile device. And so if you have an iPhone or an iPad or an Android device that runs Chrome, for example, well, you can see these on your iPhone or your iPad. If you're on vacation or traveling and you don't have access to the system, maybe you don't even log into Dynamics ever, you don't even have a username, well, you can get a lot of the data pushed out to you just through your mobile device. And so here you see the same version of this chart running inside of GP that you do running through my browser. And of course, in either of these, I could back up the date and say, well, yes, what did cash look like at the end of October last year? And so let me refresh that. And so unfortunately, my sample data is mostly in the month of April. And so if I go backwards or forward, I don't really get too much difference here. And so, but you know, in real life, you would see the actual data there that as it's presented. And so there's the end of May. So I must have posted something in May, and so you know we see the current presentation of what cash would look like on 5/31. Oh, that's 2018. So I've gone way into the future here. But this is very nice because you can do this on any device, not just through the interface here. So the last area is kind of the reminder area, and this is probably the most intelligence that's built into the system. And so you'll see I've got a number of reminders here that are showing up either as kind of hyperlinks or little icons here. And so here, let's see, I've got customer projects. Well, what is that? And so here, this opens a tool that you'll see called Smart List here. And this is yet another way to report on data. Microsoft realizes that they can't possibly create a report exactly the way that all of us out here in the real world want to look at the data. They get that. So, you know, there's a few thousand reports. Some are graphs, some are the traditional reports, some are Excel based, which we'll look at in a minute. And then they give us the tools to change those, but they also give us this tool to really go get the data in any way, shape, or form that we want. And so here I pulled out something I called customer projects. Well, that was really just to open my Smart List window here. And so if I take a peek behind the hood, you'll see I've got, and remember, I've got full security here to everything. You'll see I have different folders for all the different parts of the system that I have installed. So it could be payroll, HR, financial, which would be kind of my banking, so my cash, my accounting, kind of hardcore debits and credits there. I have fixed assets, and so we looked at the fixed asset window already. So let's go down into purchasing. We haven't talked too much about vendors here. And so if I just go down to vendors, and so you'll see a lot of folders here for PO and so forth, but let's just go to vendors, and you'll see a number of things here with asterisks on the end. Well, those come with the system. So the ones that don't have the asterisk on the end, I built. And so I'm going to show you how easy that is to actually use this in a real life example. So here's a list of vendors. Well, this is good. You know, if I was going to send out a Thanksgiving card, this would be nice, but this isn't really very helpful the way it is. So with security, I'm going to go up under columns. I'm going to clean some of this up. I don't care about this phone number stuff. I don't really even care about the vendor ID. I kind of know them as name. Well, let me pull on here and see, have I paid these guys any money this year? So I will grab the 1099 amount and type, and maybe what we should do is see, do we have a tax ID number on file for these guys? So it's getting close to that time of year. So I'm going to pull that information out. So assuming I'm going to produce 1099s out of my dynamic system in January. So I want to pull out, did I pay them money, and do I have them set up as a 1099 vendor? And if I do I have their tax number? And so this is kind of the important field. So I'm going to slide that right up there by vendor name. And when I click OK, the system's requeried and returns back in just a few seconds exactly what I asked for. And so, and of course, you know, this has the Excel functionality, so I can sort by any of these columns. But you'll notice here that, you know, it's kind of hit or miss. So there's a tax ID number, but see, I haven't even paid them. So probably at this point wouldn't be sending them a 1099. So this one looks good, but, you know, I got a lot of junk in here. I've got vendors that are not even 1099 vendors. Well, I need to clean this up. And so we can use the search feature here. And first of all, I'm going to say, well, do I even have a 1099 vendor? And of course, I have traditional searching here. So I'm going to say, is the 1099 type, is it equal to, and we're going to say miscellaneous. So that's the first thing I want to carve out. Well, if it is, did I pay him any money? So then I'm going to grab the 1099 year to date, and I'm going to go to, is it greater than the $600 requirement that we would have to send them a form? And if those conditions exist, then I want to know, okay, do I actually have their tax number? And so now this one, because I'm looking for problems, if I have their tax number, that's good. If I don't, that's what I want to know about. And so I'm going to just say if their tax ID number is equal to blank, I'm not just going to leave that blank, not put anything in there. So those are going to show me problems. And see, I do have some here. And so, well, I want to save this so I don't have to recreate the wheel here. And we'll put the November 1099 list here so we recognize it. And I'm going to make this available to everybody in the system. I could set it just for myself, but I'm going to give it to everybody. And really, I want a shortcut. I want a reminder now on my home page. And so, well, it's smart list is saying, okay, you want the reminder what? Well, when should I put the reminder up? Well, I'm going to say if the number of records is greater than 0. So if I even just have one of these, I want to know about it, and I want to look at that as a picture. So I'm going to use the visual cue there. And so while that's doing its thinking behind the scenes, this helps identify a problem, but this doesn't fix my problem. Well, now I need to fix it. So I'm going to use Microsoft Word, and the system senses now I'm talking about vendors, so it's presenting vendor letters. And same rule applies here. I can have unlimited vendor letter templates that I want. I can have employee template letters. I can have customer letter templates. No limit. There's about 60 or so that come with the system. I happen to know that there was a W-9 request that came with the software, so I'm going to use that, but I can fill that list up with all my own. I can edit Microsoft's, do anything I want there. Well, maybe these guys, you know, I just talked to, so I'm not going to send them a letter. They're still a problem. I'm just not going to send them a letter. So we'll do these 4. Well, all right, how's this letter signed? And so I'll make myself the CFO here, and of course I could put my email address in there. I won't take the time to do all of that, but when I click finish, then we do a mail merge between Dynamics GP and the data and that Word template. And that's opening on my other screen. So here are my 4 that I've requested. And remember, this is my company name today. And so here's the template. And I can't even spell my own name correctly there. So, you know, we can edit any of this if we don't like the text. Obviously, this is saying fill out the attached W-9, so I'd have to send that along to them. But I have 4 because I had 4 4 vendors that were in my smart list that I said I want to get a copy of this letter. So at this point, they're Word documents. You know, if I print them, scan them, US mail, fax them if anybody faxes anymore. You know, however I would normally get these out to the vendors, they're just Word documents now at this point. And so pretty good integration with Microsoft Word. If I wanted to do something kind of more hardcore with you know, dollars and cents, if I go up into my financial, maybe pull the account transactions, and so here's a list of transactions going back to any period 2013. Again, I can sort by any column, so if I was looking for $1.75, well, the old-fashioned way is to print off a detailed general ledger and try to go account by account and look for an entry. I mean, that's just not, that was never fun, but that's not required at all today. So I can get to the data here very, very quickly. And of course, I can drill down on any of these. I can set my own drill down. So if I don't like the drill down Microsoft has done, I can set my own. I can create my own list, my own views here. So this is really the reporting tool that a lot of people spend most of their time in, just because it's so easy. You can learn it in 5 or 10 minutes, and you're not hurting anything. You're inquiry only, so you're looking only. You're not actually making entries here. And of course, it has very tight security around what type of data people could actually look at. But maybe I want to take these 1,000 accounts and transactions here and just push out to Excel for some reason. And so when I click on the Excel button there, it takes all 1,000 rows that I have and brings that right out into Microsoft Excel. And I have my decimals set up to 5 places just to, so that people can see that you can get fairly precise here. But, you know, once this is in Excel, it's Excel. And so I would do anything I would normally do in Excel. And I can work with the data. Well, I should be able to work with the data. There we go. And so if I wanted to do some kind of slicing and dicing or reporting or whatever it might be, I can do that very, very easily and quickly by extracting that data into a nice formatted spreadsheet there. Okay, so I'm going to close out the smart list, and I'm going to just force my home page here to refresh. It usually takes a little bit of time to update, and so once it does, you see now there's our November 1099 list visual cue that shows up on my homepage as a reminder, because there are 7 of them out there. And I said, if there's any, so anything greater than 0, I need to know about it. Well, when I click on it, then that takes me right back. I don't have to recreate it because I've saved it, and I can continue to work on it. Now, as these people send their tax ID number and someone keys that into the system here, at some point all these hopefully will be taken care of. Then there won't be any data and this will drop off of my home page. And so then I don't have to go look and see, did they all get in there? The system's doing that for me and telling me when the condition either exists or doesn't. And I know that if that drops off, I'm done. I don't have a problem anymore. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about on my home page. I'm going to do one or two things outside of my home page, just so you kind of see when you go over into the subledger, so to speak, or the sub part of the system. When I go to financial, this brings everything to do with the financial system onto my page. Again, this is another way to navigate. If this isn't something I do on a regular basis, I could, nothing stopping me from using this navigation. It's just an extra click or two. Here's my journal entry screen. And nothing unusual here, just typical journal entry, and I'll open that up so you can kind of see the accounts that are being used. So nothing spectacular, but I do want to point out that if I do a journal entry in Microsoft Excel, so here's one that I have just keyed in, and kind of a simple one, but if I do a copy here, so just a highlight and copy, just a traditional kind of Alt-C or Control-C rather. And if I come over into the Dynamics GP window and I want that entry into this window, all I have to do is hit the Excel paste button, and that entry then is copied right from Excel directly into the GP window, and so I don't have to rekey that. And so that's a big time saver, and you don't have an accuracy problem or miskey an account, and nobody likes duplicate entry, nobody likes mouse practice or keyboard practice. We're all pretty good at that stuff now, and so this is kind of a time-saving thing that just lets you still do some things in Excel. If you have maybe a commission schedule there, or you calculate bonuses or whatever it might be, you might want to just use that to simply copy and paste that right into your window screen. While we're in here, we'll look quickly at budgets. We do have a budgeting system that's built in kind of out of the box here. So no limit on how many budgets we can have in the system. And we can use Excel for budgeting as well. And so if I create a new budget, you'll see I can start a wizard here that walks me through. I give it a budget ID and kind of what period of time I want to be budgeting, and then this will create an Excel template. I'll email that out to the department head or whoever is actually going to be responsible to complete that part of the budget, and it doesn't have to be the entire department. It can be just kind of the overhead accounts. Maybe salaries and benefits are budgeted by HR, so I wouldn't send those accounts out. And then I can bring that back in using the wizard, and I can import from Excel directly back into the system. The wizard starts up. I can go get that Excel file, and I can bring that into an existing budget or start a new budget directly from an import here. And so if you do budgeting, that's a really simple way to do it. Microsoft knows that a lot of people still rely on Excel for budgeting because that's how we've done it for 20-some years. And so we have a very nice tool there to make that pretty painless and pretty straightforward. Again, you don't want to rekey stuff. That's just crazy. And so that's what a lot of folks use for budgeting. If I toggle over to my purchasing area, so everything to do with purchasing, like purchase orders, requisitions, we looked at, accounts payable, and so forth. But people seem to do a lot of research when it comes to payables, and so Microsoft has a couple of versions ago built a nice window here to pull everything together for a particular vendor. And so, here I might be, let's take advanced here. I think I've got some data. And so here we see everything that this vendor is involved in, from purchase orders, if I use that, and I don't have to. Of course, if I do POs and I have inventory, I I need to receive those, but I could just key in an invoice. So if this was Office Depot, there's no PO, there's no receipt. I just have an invoice, or maybe it's janitor service or something. I won't have the columns to the left. And then of course you'd have payments, and you might have a return at some point or a credit. So I'm going to go in and make sure I have my history checked, because that way I'll get a little more data. In real life, you typically wouldn't necessarily want to see all of your history, but I think my payments, of course, will be in history. There they are. And I might have a return or two out in history. I've got one, and maybe a credit. And so what this window does, what this view gives us, is the ability to see everything that is involved in a transaction. So of course the blue, remember, that's our drill down. So if I want to drill back on this payment, I can drill back there and see what this was about. Of course the screen is all gray, and so you know, I can see my check, the bank that I drew the check on, my check 20036. I can attach documents, even notes, or it looks like I've got a little piece of paper here, so I can actually attach documentation or not. So my scan button is grayed out because I don't have a scanner hooked up today, but I do have the ability to go get something from, not that one. If I have scanned something into the system, so maybe a W-9, for example, might go on the vendor card. That would be a pretty common one that you would scan in there. So, but anything at all that's in electronic format, it could be a PDF, it can be an Excel file, anything whatsoever that's electronic can be brought into the system. This makes a permanent copy of whatever it is I'm attaching. And puts it into my database. So if those originals get deleted, that's okay. I still have my copy here. Sometimes the vendor doesn't apply the payment right, or needs a copy of the check stub. We can click the button to print or recreate the check stub right here on the screen. Of course, we could print that, or we could send that to the vendor. If I have them on the phone, we're trying to reconcile our account. So that's right there. The idea is that you don't need to go to file cabinets and dig through papers and so forth. Well, that's only part of the power here. I might want to see, well, which invoices got paid with this particular payment. So if I check the box here, then everything to the left is cleared away except those things that are ultimately a part of this payment. Well, there's the invoice, and we see the same dollar amount. This actually was a receipt for the same dollar that was originally a purchase order for the same dollar amount. And again, you can drill back on any and all of this very, very quickly. And so that's a very quick way to do what a lot of people call research. You don't have to be digging through you know, paper or going from memory. If I tick off this credit, well, this tells me immediately that this credit is applied to this invoice. And so you know, I might have to rely on handwritten notes or stuff in a file cabinet, heaven forbid. This is a much more efficient way to do that. And so you have this in sales, you have it in inventory, and you have it in purchasing in the software to have that kind of one or two click access to the system. So one more thing, Ashley, and then we'll take some questions. I'm going to flip over to sales. And again, same idea here. You know, any of these pages can be cleaned up. And so if I don't, you know, really work on setup or utilities, I don't even know what that stuff is. And so I want to take those off my page. Well, they quickly disappear. Of course, I could go get them back if I do need to have access to them. But we'll go into the transaction entry here. And here I just wanted you to kind of see the order entry screen. Everything to do with ordering, so this is the customer side, whether it's a quote, an order, an invoice, a return, a back order, it's all in one screen. You're not going back and forth to find certain documents. And of course, quotes can be electronically converted to orders, and orders to invoices, and then back orders if that's required. And so let me delete this one, and so I can bring one up that I have. And so I'm going to get a document that I've already put in the system. And just a simple thing here for a bookstore. Maybe we're selling to a bookstore here. And so something pretty generic. This is a busy window because there's a lot of stuff going on. Of course, you can ship to multiple different locations for a customer. Customer might have a PO that you're tracking. Lots and lots of components that go into the selling side here. But the thing that I really wanted to illustrate was you can email any of these documents out. Same with purchase orders, customer statements. This is an invoice. I could email the order, the quote. I've stored the email address. I've actually put my own in there. And so you'll see that that very quickly produces an email. And as soon as that comes into my Outlook here, I'll open it so you can kind of take a look at it. You do, as an option, have the ability to print these off in Microsoft Word. And so I'll just print the invoice. So I'm going to use a Word template that, again, is an out-of-the-box feature here. All I've done here is add a logo. Looks like I got it a little chopped off there, but you kind of get the idea. And so here's my company. This is a template. Same rule here. All these can be edited to your own liking. You're not forced to use anything that Microsoft has done, but it is complete out of the box. And so what you're seeing is the out of the box template. All I've done is say, hey, go get my logo and put on these invoices or quotes or orders or purchase orders, whatever it might be when you print that. And so the invoice has arrived in my inbox. And so here's the invoice, just came in 11:53 Central. And I have these sent out in PDF. And so here's the invoice that the customer would receive then. And so looks pretty much like the one I just printed to my screen, doesn't it? Because it is. And so it's using that Word template, converted that to a PDF, and out it went based on my email settings. And so so with that, we have, I think, a pretty good overview of navigation, kind of how we move around. We looked at a lot of different things on the home page, a lot of different parts of the system here based on the shortcuts that I have. Dug into purchasing just a little bit and how to do research. Talked about emailing documents from sales. We can do the same thing with POs. Briefly touched on fixed assets. Fixed assets is integrated with purchase order. It's integrated with payables, of course, and tracks unlimited depreciation methods. Of course, you'd do one for your general ledger. You might do one for tax purposes. And so here's an asset that I've already set up here. And if I go into the calculation methods, I see here I've got my internal. That's what's going to post my GL. I also have a federal tax and an alternative minimum tax. Just those don't post anywhere, but that gives me the ability to report on what those differences might be. And so there's virtually no depreciation method that can't be tracked in the system. Microsoft updates this for tax law changes. And so, you know, if Congress passes a new depreciation law, they will put in their next update what those rules are, and we'll have that. And so we still have tax laws going back to the Reagan days, 1986, when there were massive overhauls. Those rules are still in there because those assets still could be out there. And so anyway, looked at a lot of different things. Hopefully that gives you a pretty good overview of a little bit about Dynamics GP 2016. Again, we're going to do the exact same thing on December 15th, but we'll be using the brand new version GP 2018 and focus a lot on the new features that Microsoft is adding to that. So Ashley, do we have any questions out in the queue?
Thanks, Brian. We just have one question, and you kind of talked about it, but when will GP 2018 be released, and how will that be different from what you just showed today?
So release date is scheduled for the 1st of December. Microsoft is on track for that, so it should be commercially available then. It will have the same look and feel, but it'll have, you know, 100 new features in it. And so on the 15th, we'll cover a lot of those new features. But they've done a pretty nice job of adding some really what I'd call cool things to the system. A lot of the features come from user input, where users are saying, hey, if you could do this, this would really help. Well, then those go out for vote, and any user anywhere in the world can go vote. And when a feature gets 5 or 6 votes, they start to look at it, and a lot of the features, about 60% of what's going into GP 2018 came from those user requests. And so there's a special website that you go to put those in, and they listen, and so they spend a lot of that money on what people want. There's not an easier way to make people happy or keep them happy is to give them what they want, right? So that's typically what we see, is about half of the features in the new versions come from the installed base. So December 1st should be a shipping product.
Great, thanks, Brian. And everyone can expect to see a link to the recording of today's session, and I'll also include a link to register for that upcoming webinar on December 15th that Brian mentioned for GP 2018.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
if no other questions, we were right close to the top of the hour, so thank you again for everyone that joined, and as Ashley said, let us know what questions you have.
Thank you very much, and thanks everyone for attending today, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye.